time for a review of the new HBO movie Mountainhead. This is Jesse Armstrong's follow-up to Succession, which he both created and wrote the majority of the episodes, and is very much in the same vein of that show, which is one of my favorite of all time. It also sees a lot of that creative team returning, basically everyone except for the cast, and is also quite thematically and narratively similar to Succession as well. It follows four tech moguls and longtime friends who meet up for a weekend getaway that eventually dilutes into insanity as one of their companies and one of their AI models starts to lead to the deterioration of global economy and politics. It is kind of vague about what is going on outside of like this bottle episode structure, and because it's entirely focused on these four people, it's a little difficult to know exactly what's going on outside of this world. It also just seems highly unlikely that like the entirety of the world is collapsing in just a few hours. And I don't think the writing does necessarily a great job of letting the audience feel the weight of that. And obviously it's because the tech moguls here are largely unconcerned with it, but you do want to feel it as an audience member, even if the people within the film aren't feeling it. But the majority of the first act is essentially just these guys talking out hypotheticals to each other about like owning the entire world, which I found to be quite uninteresting, even if the dialogue is still great, just like it was in Succession, and the performances are pretty solid here as well. Sometimes it feels like a parody of Armstrong's writing style as well. There's a lot of like Roman Roy-isms that are definitely reused within this film, but I still think they work quite well and are really, really funny. And in my opinion, that's the main goal of this movie, is just to be an entertaining and funny satire. It's not necessarily saying anything deeply insightful about these tech moguls other than what has already been said much better in other films and in Succession itself. These are people that are simultaneously entirely acting on their emotions, but are also so detached from their own emotions because they're so absurdly wealthy that they don't necessarily know how to behave properly. It's quite timely that this movie is premiering right around the time that Elon Musk is having this huge Twitter meltdown. It's a lot of art imitating life, or maybe life imitating art in a sense, but it also leads to Mountainhead losing a lot of its satiric potency, because honestly the absurdity of what's going on right now is far more absurd than what's actually going on in this movie. And because this is only about an hour and 45 minutes, they don't have a lot of time to flesh out all of these characters. So as a result, I think Mountainhead largely fails as a satirical insight on tech moguls, but it succeeds in being a really entertaining comedy. And that is largely due to the cast here, who is really, really committed and also just has really great comedic timing and great comedic chemistry with each other. A combination of up-and-coming performers and like weathered comedic veterans. You have Steve Carrell, Jason Schwartzman, Cory Michael Smith, and Ramy Yousef here. Four performers who I think are really great comedically, but also have a knack for dramatic acting as well. And you do see some of that playing out here, as it is kind of a dramedy. I particularly really loved what Steve Carrell was doing here. His character is someone who is wrestling with his own mortality and therefore going to desperate measures to maintain it, which is something that we've seen in a lot of films, a lot of shows, a lot of stories in general. But the twist here is that because he is a tech mogul and because he has tech friends, he genuinely believes that he can like become immortal through the cloud or something. I think Carell really sells that desperation, as well as a couple of moments where he like has a genuine tiny meltdown that I found to be really, really great. And I thought this was going to lead to like a final huge meltdown that was going to be like an emotional and powerfully acted monologue from Carell, but he melts down in a far more subtle way that I'm not going to spoil here, but is really, really funny and lends itself well to Carell's specific comedic abilities. Cory Michael Smith is probably the most unhinged character here. He reminds me of a mix of Lucas Matson and Roman Roy from Succession, and it's probably the most obvious Musk comparison, even if all of these people have some element of Musk within them. But he does a great job of delivering the flippancy of this character and his unwavering lack of morality. There's really no moment where you feel like this person is going to do the right thing. They're just always messing up. Ramy Yousef also has a few really great one-liners in here. Probably the person who has the best grasp around Jesse Armstrong's very wordy dialogue. And while Jason Schwartzman, in my opinion, is getting a little bit less to do than these other three people, he is still great. I mean, he's still Jason Schwartzman, and he has a lot of really funny moments as well, and kind of acts as the punching bag of this quartet. But what really makes them pop top is whenever they're all together. They just have this great knack of comedic chemistry, in my opinion, and really work off of each other well. There's a lot of really great jokes and gags here, and I don't want to spoil it, but around the hour mark, it just dilutes into a really insane bit that I thought was just going to be like a single scene, but then becomes the entire premise of this film's third act, which is really when it hits its comedic stride. I think the final 30 minutes of this movie are really, really funny, but it doesn't do a very good job of sticking the landing. It's a somewhat anticlimactic conclusion. It does kind of feel like a bottle episode of a show that we've never seen, and I think there is a world where this is a mini-series or maybe an entire series of television, where we see all of these characters fleshed out. Because as a film, it is pretty weakly written and doesn't leave the viewer a lot to chew on. It is quite forgettable. And perhaps my favorite aspect of Armstrong's writing within Succession was the way that the power dynamics would constantly shift episode to episode. His writing does lend itself a little bit better to this long-form television format rather than this TV movie format. But that lack of truly fleshed out characters, as well as the lack of insightful satire, does lead to Mountainhead feeling like it's in one ear and out the other. But it is pretty fun when it's on, in my opinion. Besides a somewhat slow first act, it really starts to kick into high gear in the second and third acts, and is pretty funny for the most part, largely due to the comedic timing of the performances here. And I don't want to compare everything in here to Succession because this is very much its own thing, but it is strikingly similar to that show. And as a result, the comparisons are inevitable, so I'm just going to say this pales in comparison to Succession, specifically in the satire and the character writing. It is quite entertaining, though, and as a result, I think Mountainhead is still a worthwhile time. I would give this a 3 out of 5, bordering on 3.5 out of 5, but I think that I'll keep it at 3 out of 5 for now. I was a little bit underwhelmed by it, but for the most part, I had a pretty good time. And I think it's worth watching just for the 4 performances here alone. These are 4 guys that I really, really like, specifically Cory Michael Smith. I can't wait to see what he continues to do in his career. But other than that, that's really all I have to say about Mountainhead. That's it. More videos coming soon. So yeah, watch those. Maybe watch Mountainhead if you want to. And that's all I really got to say. So see ya. Goodbye.